Have you ever stopped to think about how the people managing literally trillions of dollars sleep at night? Well, it's not by just hoping for the best. They have a sophisticated game plan, a strategy for dealing with risk. So today, let's pull back the curtain and see how the pros really do it.
I mean, that really is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? When you're in charge of the money for entire countries, for massive pension funds, for the life savings of millions of people, well, just winging it is not an option. The stakes are just unbelievably high, and so the systems they build to handle all that uncertainty have to be rock solid.
And this quote from Garp gets right to the heart of it. For these professionals, this is not some academic exercise. It's what's called a fiduciary duty. That's a heavy, legally binding obligation to always act in their clients' best interests. Every single decision they make sends ripples out into the real world, affecting everything from retirement funds to university endowments.
Okay, so first things first, we need to kind of reframe what we even mean by the word risk. For the pros, it's not just a scary word for danger or losing money. No, it's way more nuanced. Think of it as a fundamental variable that you have to understand, you have to measure, and then you strategically manage it.
You know, the 2008 financial crisis was a massive wake-up call for everybody. It was this brutal lesson in how interconnected everything had become. It showed that just trying to avoid one or two obvious problems wasn't nearly enough. The whole system had to get smarter, moving towards this big-picture, enterprise-wide view that gets how one tiny risk over here can set off a chain reaction and affect everything else.
So how in the world do you build a system that's strong enough to handle all that complexity? Well, you start with a solid blueprint. And in the world of finance, that blueprint is called a risk governance framework. It is the absolute foundation that every single investment decision is built upon.
And here's the fascinating part. The most important, most critical control isn't some fancy piece of software or a supercomputer running complex math. It's culture. It's the people. And that has to start at the very top, with the board, with senior management, and it has to trickle down through the entire organization so that managing risk becomes part of everyone's job.
And this culture isn't just a vague idea. It's actually built right into the structure of the company with a few non-negotiable rules. First, you have to segregate functions. Plain and simple, the person who makes a trade can't be the same person who signs off on it. Second, the oversight has to be independent. You need a risk team that can look at the investment team and say, hey, hold on a second, without any fear of bias. And third, everyone's role has to be crystal clear. Everybody needs to know exactly what they are responsible for in this whole process.
Okay, so we have our blueprint, our governance is in place. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the specific challenges this whole framework is designed to tackle? What are the actual real-world risks that keep portfolio managers up at night?
Well, here are some of the big ones. First up, liquidity risk. Basically, if you need to sell something fast, can you do it without tanking the price? Then there's concentration risk. You know, the old all your eggs in one basket problem? Are you too exposed to one company or one sector? Then you've got leverage risk. How much money have you borrowed? Because that magnifies your wins, but it really magnifies your losses. And finally, counterparty risk, which is basically, can you trust the person on the other side of your deal to actually follow through?
All right, we've laid the foundation, the blueprint. Now we're going to pivot to what I'm calling the masterstroke. This is where the thinking gets really interesting and shifts from just playing defense to playing a very sophisticated game of offense. And it's all built around a concept called risk budgeting.
This right here, this is the whole paradigm shift in a nutshell. The old school way of thinking was purely defensive. Risk is bad, let's get rid of as much as possible. But the modern view completely flips that around. It sees risk as a resource, just like your capital, a finite resource. And the goal isn't to eliminate it, but to spend your risk budget wisely on the opportunities that give you the best bang for your buck. Now, this whole strategic approach is built on a really powerful idea called the fundamental law of active management. Now, don't let the formula scare you. It's actually pretty simple. It says that your value add, the information ratio, or IR, is your skill. That's the information coefficient, or IC, times the square root of n, which is the number of independent investment ideas you have.
Okay, let's just put that in plain English. What it really means is this. Your success comes down to just two things. How good your ideas are, that's your skill, and how many different, unrelated ideas you have. See, you could be the smartest investor on the planet, but if all your bets are basically on the exact same thing happening, your potential is capped.
And that's precisely why you hear big firms talk about effective diversification. It's not just about owning 100 different stocks, it's about owning 100 different stocks that don't all move in the same direction. It's about maximizing that N in the formula, the breadth of your ideas to build a portfolio that's way more resilient.
So that's the theory. But how does it actually look in a real-world, multi-billion-dollar portfolio? Well, many of the top firms use a very structured approach, often broken down into pillars, to put this whole idea of risk budgeting into action.
This framework from Amundi is a perfect example. They break their portfolio down into 4 distinct pillars. Pillar 1, macro strategy. That's for their big picture, high confidence bets on where the world is heading. Pillar 2 is macro hedging. That's the defense, protecting the portfolio in case that big picture view is wrong. Pillar 3, satellite strategies, is all about hunting for those unique, uncorrelated ideas that add real diversification. And finally, Pillar 4, selection strategies. That's your classic, bottom-up, stock and bond picking to generate extra return or alpha.
And this is what it's all about. Each of those pillars is designed to be a different engine, a different independent source of returns. It's like building a machine where all the parts are working together, but not relying on each other. If one part sputters, the others can keep things going. That is the essence of effective diversification.
So the firm decides on its total risk budget and then deliberately carves it up and allocates it across these pillars. They decide exactly how much risk they want to spend on their big macro view, how much to spend on those satellite ideas, and so on. It's a proactive, offensive strategy designed not just to limit the downside, but to actively go after their target return.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. You and I might not be managing billions of dollars, but the principle is exactly the same. So the question to leave you with is this. When you look at your own finances, are you thinking like a professional? Are you actively budgeting your risk to help you reach your goals? Or are you just trying to avoid risk altogether? And maybe, just maybe, missing out on the rewards?